Welcome to another episode of Serum Audio, live here from Microsoft Ignite in Orlando. I am Sean Tabor, and as always, with me is Joel Lindstrom. How you doing, Joel?
Doing great.
That didn't sound very, very positive.
I'm doing great, Sean. How are you?
There you go. Bring it up a little bit. We're at Ignite, Joel. And our guest, Vivek Bavishi. How you doing, Vivek?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me here.
Joel almost made me mess it up. So before we get started, I wanted to thank all our listeners for listening to the podcast. And since we are recording it at Microsoft Ignite, Microsoft is giving away Microsoft Surface earbuds to our listeners. Yes, we're actually giving something away on the Serum Audio podcast. So to enter, visit. I almost said Vivek. Vivek has nothing to do with this offer and cannot help you in any way. But to enter, visit https://podcast sweepstakes. We'll have the link in the show notes. And do that before December 15th, 2019 for your chance to win a fancy set of Microsoft Surface earbuds.
That's awesome. And so, Vivek, thanks for joining us. I asked you to be on here because I've seen you a lot online and in the community. Mm-hmm. Number one question, you were the first person I saw use the Power Addicts hashtag. Did you come up with that, or what's the story behind Power Addict?
So it wasn't just me. It was around like 4 or 5 of us, and it was almost a year back from now. We were having some chat on Twitter, and somebody just said, okay, let's just all of us meet together and make a video out of it. And then we were like, okay, we need to think about what we call it. And we were like, what's the one thing which is common for all of us? We are all addicts. So we said, okay, let's put power in front of it and call ourselves Power Addicts. And it got stuck, and it's right now a hashtag, and it's just kind of self-propagated hashtag. We don't monitor it or anything. It's just something which everybody uses, and everybody resonates with it now.
And every time, ever since then, at MBAS and here, they have a video about the community and Power Addicts. Mm-hmm. You're in it. You are like the face of Power Addicts, or one of them.
I mean, yeah, it's good to be on a video, of course. However, it's I would say I think the community has risen so much, and it's so easy to reach out to people who are on the Power platform. I mean, you just put a hashtag Power Addicts, and there is somebody somewhere in the world who is looking at it. There are people in Japan, there are people in UK, Europe, India, Singapore, just looking at this, and they're like, yeah, we need to help. So the only thing that we tell people is, if you get help by somebody, take it further, help somebody else. And that's what has been the common thing that has connected all of us.
So to call yourself a Power Addict, is there a minimum level of either community involvement or experience you need? So, for example, I've seen people post, how much they love the community and how great they are, but they've never really built an app. Can you be a Power Addict before you built an app, or do you need to actually build an app to be a Power Addict?
There's no requirement as such to be a Power Addict. If you know the term Power Addict, you're probably
you are a Power Addict.
Yeah,
okay.
So that's how we become. And I've been asked this question a bunch of times, and I'm like, yeah, you just need to have the passion for the community, and then you will be a Power Addict, or you are a Power Addict.
I've seen some of your posts and videos and things you've done, and you've done some geeky stuff with APIs and things like that, and working on the integration with Spotify to change your playlist, and none of my songs got selected because they were all really lame. But so you must be a really smart developer. Is your background in development?
Not at all.
What?
Yep, I'm not a developer at all. And my base or my background has been a course in C++ in my high school, and some HTML and Stack Overflow.
Okay.
That's it. So I've always been about digital transformation. I like to if I want to achieve something which can be done digitally, I just look for how to do it, and then I just try to come up with some solution. And learning with the APIs was actually because of the feature in Flow, where you can send the data back to Power Apps. As soon as they introduce it, I'm like, okay, I need to learn about APIs more now so that I can collect this and like data from some third-party APIs and play around with it. So
Yeah,
I didn't know.
if you get into the interacting with Flow and Power Apps together, you're going to start working with JSON and
Yeah.
APIs and HTTP and
Yeah.
stuff that, you know, I wasn't familiar with before then. But you get a basic comfort level with it.
Yeah, so it's funny that like, a year ago I didn't know anything about APIs, and now I'm that API guy. Though I don't have any developer or any kind of background, it's just kind of learning just figuring out things, right, as you go on it. So now I know what OAuth is, what like the basic authentication is the worst one, the API key one. But yeah, it's just Power Platform has triggered it. And because of that, I have tried to learn a lot of other things which help me in developing solutions on Power Platform.
Great. And so, what's your day job when you're not being a Power Addict?
So my day job actually just changed a few
Wow.
days back, and that's because of Power Platform. So I was in a marketing role, kind of managing digital customer experience for Regal Beloit. We are an electric motor manufacturing company, and I was mainly working on product content and things like I would say website, e-commerce, and all that stuff. And now I'll be leading Dynamics along with somebody in our team. I'll be leading Power Platform and also some Office 365 productivity, and that just happened a few days back, just because of my exposure to the Power Platform and our company wanting to leverage that. So yeah,
That's great.
yeah.
Congratulations on that. And
Thank you.
that's a great example of how I think for all of us, we wouldn't be doing what we are today if it wasn't for the Power Platform,
Right,
Dynamics, and these
right.
technologies. And I don't know what I'd be doing if it wasn't it wasn't for this. But it begs a question, though. A lot of the things I see a lot of activity on nights and weekends from Power Addicts because a lot of them don't get to do this as their day job.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing something else. They want to do this, but maybe they're a salesperson or maybe they're in a marketing role like yourself, and so they're playing with this. Does it change things when you're doing it for your day job? Are you as likely to want to still develop Power Apps on the weekend if you're also doing it during the week?
Yeah, I was talking to somebody and I was like, I'm actually scared about this now because of this being my 100% of my role. I might spend more time on it, which I don't want to, right? I
Right.
mean, because you're so passionate about it, you're like, yeah, I can work hours on making apps and don't not even realize what the time is.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's, I mean, the passion for this whole community is that, I mean, you can make apps and flows anytime, and I'm not gonna stop on that. I mean, I'll keep making some fun stuff, some things, stay updated on the features and updates that's coming along, and I'll be still as active on the community, and if not more.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think key difference to me is if you're not doing it as part of your job or building apps that real people are using in the real world,
Mm-hmm.
you can do some really cool stuff. And I see some of the people, building games on the Power Platform or real things. But when it comes down to it, nobody's really using those apps.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're building things, even if it's a simple app for, say, a ticket request system or a timesheet system or things like that, there you have to build things that will be usable by real people and perform, and they might not have all the eye candy in them,
Mm-hmm.
but you go to the next level because you can have real experience, not just theoretical experience.
So I think there's like a combination of these things that you need to have, or you probably have is so when you make these games or some anything like fun stuff using Power Platform, you're not. I mean, nobody's going to use it in the business. However, you are learning the platform by doing that stuff.
Yeah.
You make a game, you'll know all the features, all the controls, and everything that you could possibly use on the Power Apps kind of the interface. So I think that's kind of your base, right? I mean, you keep doing that and keep learning more new stuff, because if you get into making an app for your business process or business use case, you'll be restricted to that, and you won't get to know about the new things that are coming up, the new features. And if you're not part of the community, you just stay kind of, I'd say you'll be outdated then. So I think you need to have a combination of two things to kind of stay updated and know about the new things coming up so that you can then use it in the business use case.
So do you have any apps that you've built that you use every day yourself?
Ye- I think yes. So there's one. So I monitor a lot of my lot of the apps that are being used in our company, just the analytics behind it. So every day I want to see how many total users have used Power Apps in our company.
Yeah.
So I have a Power App for that. Just a one-screen app to show me how many users have been active the previous week or previous day.
That's cool. And that's one thing I'm challenging my team is, yeah, building these example apps and games is great. You need to build yourself an app, find a reason for using Power Apps every day. Like some mission critical, like I needed a food tracking app. Instead of downloading one of the third-party ones, I said, I'm going to make my own. And you gain a lot of experience with usability that way. Because if you're building something and you have to use it for your mission critical or your personal stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you'll realize, yeah, this is really not that great. This would be so much easier if it did that. And then that's a way to get experience before that's your day job, I think.
Well,
Yeah.
and the stuff, like, whenever I build anything, to try to separate it from work, if it's community, I always try to look at when I'm building something, okay, what are the business objectives that I'm trying to achieve, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are the standard processes that I'm trying to enable? And then say to myself, okay, how can I apply a Star Wars canvas on it?
Mm-hmm.
Because then it's enjoyable to me,
Yeah.
but I can still relate it, and it separates it from work. It doesn't make it boring, doesn't make it work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that way I can enjoy learning and not get bogged down with, ugh, I got to do more Power Apps.
But
No.
being at work never stopped you from using Star Wars analogies, Sean.
Yeah, but that's just to annoy you.
No, that's a really good point. You need to make your power. The biggest challenge for any new company is to have the adoption of the Power Platform, right? So, to make it more fun, to make it more, to have even some apps just for kind of making people use it more, right?
Hmm.
Like there is Microsoft has this whole package now where you can have this Kudos app in your company. I mean, things like that to kind of trigger the users to use it, right?
Right,
It's something fun. It's something which it's not work, and it kind of encourages them to use it more. So,
right.
Yeah, that's great. So, given that you've done a lot with Canvas apps and you're working with Dynamics and
hmm
CDS as well, I guess what is your perspective when it comes to you have a requirement for an app? Um, where do you see where you'll use the common data service? Where will you choose maybe some other places to store your data or connectors?
so, so we in our company use Dynamics, and because of that, I would say we would probably try to look at CDS for most of our data sourcing, right? So at any point, and most of our apps are towards our field sales team right now, and like we were working on an app, like a field audit app. So it made more sense to save that kind of data in your CDS
Sure.
and relate it to what you already have in your all the entities. So kind of relate. So I would say yes. I'll be probably just looking at CDS mainly because how our business works. But yeah, I understand people look at different. I mean, if it's a different function in our company, we might look at something else.
But you were mentioning before that we started recording some of the limitations you found with CDS that you had to work around. What are some of the things you found that CDS we're not trashing CDS.
Yeah,
I mean, we
yeah.
love CDS, but it's not perfect. So what are
Mm-hmm.
some of the things when you're building, especially Canvas apps,
Yeah.
that you find a little frustrating maybe working with
So
CDS?
I think the latest has been the new data source experience in Canvas apps.
Okay.
They released it. They first made it experimental. They made it preview, and then finally they released it. Uh, However, I think it's still not perfect,
Okay.
mainly because we had some issues where you add entities and it throws an error for no reason.
Sure.
Small things. It's not like big issues. However, it's kind of hindering us kind of from going ahead on some of the things. So we are working on getting all. So we had a lot of dialogues, and to use the new unified interface, we need to change them to use like an embedded Canvas app.
Sure.
So while we were working on it, we found a lot of issues. Um, One was the new data source experience not being the perfect, and also having some issues with the custom entities. But I know, I mean, it's something that the Microsoft team is already aware about, and they are working on it. I think it's just a matter of a few weeks before they make it final. But I think they need to work on these small things,
Right.
which should make it perfect. But yeah, right now I think it's not at that level.
Right. And we had a episode with Steven Siciliano about Power Automate, but this would apply to the Canvas apps connectors too, that when they came out with the new one, like with the current environment connector for Power
Mm-hmm.
Automate, they didn't document the differences, and there were some things that just worked differently, and we thought, oh, it's a bug, but it turned out,
Yeah.
oh no, you have to do it this other way. Like the way you set polymorphic fields is
Mm-hmm.
different.
Yeah.
It's not that it doesn't work. It's like it's different, but they didn't tell anybody. Then you raise a call, you call Microsoft and they say, oh no, you need to do it that way.
Yeah.
And once you figure those things out, then you're pretty good. But yeah, I can see that. There's that frustration. I find also like if you're working with the main entities, you're usually okay.
Yeah.
But the farther out of the mainstream you get, like some of those things in the back dark alleys of the
Mm-hmm.
CDS, you can't work with activity parties. But some of those things like territories and other things like that, those don't get the level of testing that
That
some of the
accounts or
primary entities
contacts
do.
does,
So,
yeah.
you may run into some speed bumps when you do
Yeah.
that.
But the good thing is like the product team is so close to it, and anytime you have any issue with it, it's always on their radar. So that's a good thing, right? I mean, they invested on that.
Right.
So we are not kind of worried about the CDS connector because we know that it's gonna if it's not perfect today, it will be perfect within a few months or a few weeks, whatever the case be.
Right. So
Yeah.
I find a lot of people in the Power Addict community focus more on one piece than the others. They'll
Mhm.
focus on Canvas apps,
Mhm.
ignore Flow, or they'll go deep in Flow and don't
Right.
really know Canvas apps. You've kind of covered both, haven't you?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's I think it's just that if you have not discovered it yet, you'll be discovering it. So I started off using Power Apps, and before that, I think I knew about Flow, but it was mainly for kind of I had used IFTTT, and I was like, okay, there is um, this the Flow looks similar to it. But yeah, it's so I started off with Power Apps and then realized that if I don't use Power Automate along with it, it won't make a lot of sense. So, and when we realized that okay, if we combine both these things, we can achieve much more. It
Yeah.
was just a matter of
So is
time. Yeah.
like to me, Flow is when you're working in Canvas apps, Flow is your escape valve. So like if you can't get it to work with a Canvas app, you can always whip out Flow and do it with a Flow usually.
Yeah. So it's true. I mean, you have to combine those two things to make a good, I would say, a use case, right? It's without Power Automate. I mean, a lot of our apps might not be the best,
Right.
right? So it's you need. I mean, those two products combined together, and kind of having a layer of Power BI to just see. It's more on the reporting side.
So do you think if somebody is maybe a SharePoint or CRM person that hasn't really gotten into the Power Platform yet, Is the first step easier to go with Flow or with Canvas apps? Where's the best place to start learning?
So if somebody is from SharePoint, I think the first step that's easier for them is to use Flow,
Okay.
because there are a lot of use cases, right? I mean, when you update a record or anything to create a flow, and it's right there in front of their eyes. I know there are two buttons. There's a Power Apps button as well to create an app, but then it's like, okay, I can create an app, and I'm just can create records, which I can anyways do in SharePoint.
Right.
So it's good to know that there is an option to do it, but at the same time, if you don't have a use case around it, it doesn't make sense. Whereas Power Automate, you can have a lot of use cases around it. You can have approvals. You can start it from SharePoint. Even in CRM, right? I mean, there's ways to just create flows directly from there. So there are more use cases to start using Power Automate right off the hook from SharePoint and CRM rather than using Power Apps. And it's easier to build those flows and start having something pretty soon rather than creating a whole app around it.
Okay. So you have a requirement from your boss. I need an app, and it's got to do something. Say, post a message in Teams. But that feature, okay, let's go the three categories: experimental, preview, and GA.
Hmm.
Would you use experimental features in your app if it's the only way to do it?
Not in production.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you use preview? Yeah, preview
Yes.
feature in production.
Uh, I mean, if it's a critical process, maybe not.
Okay.
But yeah, if it's something which, if it fail, preview hasn't. We have used preview so far, and we haven't had any issue.
Okay.
So
But
let me
like your
frame it
preview
that.
features can still break. So like embedded Canvas apps, the way they did it initially with the model-driven integration
Hmm.
changed with the GA
Yep.
to where it didn't give you all the fields. So then you had to go do that. So did you, in that case, you know?
So fortunately, nothing has happened with us like that. We haven't used any preview feature which has changed the way it works in GA. So I mean, it's just been luck, I guess. But yeah, I understand. You probably, I mean, if it's an app that is being used by more than 50 people or something in your company, you probably don't want to use any of the preview or experimental, just because, I mean, things can change and you don't want to have some critical process around it.
It's so tempting though when you have somebody say, "I have to have this," and like it's an experimental feature. It's so tempting to say, "Yes, I'll use that," and then it.
Well, but then that's the case to say, okay, then this is an experimental Power App.
Right.
It
Yeah.
is no longer. It's
Or
going
this
to
is
be
a POC.
right. It's not going to go into production.
Right.
And we'll test this out and we'll wait for GA and then we'll put it on our roadmap and
Yeah, I
get it
mean,
live.
just phase it out, right? I mean, let people know. So what we do generally is we let people know, okay, this is coming, and you'll have this sooner or later.
Hmm.
We'll improve the app to have this experience. It's just that it's not
Right.
GA yet, and we don't want to add it into production.
Right.
So we let people know though that this is coming, and you'll benefit from it. Like things like even portals and external access, right? I mean, it's so tempting to just start using it, but then you're like, okay, it's coming up, so you can start working on your proof of concepts, start testing it, and I mean, I haven't seen them taking a lot of time on. Sometimes some features take a lot of months, but otherwise they
Right.
generally go GA pretty soon.
Right.
Yeah. The barcode scanner took a while.
Oh yeah, yeah.
um,
And components.
right.
Components was experimental for such a long time, uh, and it was so tempting to use those things.
Right.
So, how much have you gotten, or are you looking to get into the Power Virtual Agent?
That's a good question. I haven't. I mean, I've just seen a demo yet,
Hmm.
and I'm excited to use it because especially on our website,
Hmm.
it would make a lot of sense. However, I'm not sure how easy or how difficult it is to like add the complexity that the business has.
Yeah.
Any business have their own complexities, right? So, is the Power Virtual Agents capable of handling that complexity? Is it that easy to implement that complexity into it? So that's something that I'll have to I would want to know before I kind of invest myself into it.
So what I've seen to this point is the extendability of it is really dependent on the actions.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, it's primarily HTTPS requests, right?
Okay.
So with it being brought into the Power Platform family, I think we're going to see a lot of additional capabilities with channels that
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be exposing, and make it a lot easier with Power Automate to
Yeah.
extend it and
Okay.
get to other information.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, extensibility is limited somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
Super easy to create, super easy to deploy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm eager to see what kind of changes are going to happen, and how that's going to really enable it with the Power Platform.
Yeah, I mean, they just started with it, right? So
Yeah,
there's a lot to come, I guess.
yeah, exactly. With what would you say would be the thing that would really make you happy if they brought it to the Power Platform? What's the one thing that kind of drives you batty?
Ah, it's that's a difficult one. But I think we already talked about the CDS stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it's, I think making it robust, making it perfect, because if Microsoft is kind of promoting CDS,
Hmm.
I would want that to be like super perfect.
Right.
It shouldn't have any issues at all.
Right.
So I think that's the one big thing I would want from Microsoft. Yeah.
I'm looking for a better way to incorporate Power BI.
Mm.
A
Yeah.
little more seamlessly.
Mhm.
I mean, you could do it within a Canvas app, and that's great. But still on the model-driven side, it's still the personal dashboards and that kind of thing. And I know some of that has to do with licensing,
Yeah.
but I'd like to see some of those barriers taken away.
Yeah,
Cool.
and I think some things we're seeing coming together, like the ability to use system views in your filters and things like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
I'd like to see a little bit more of that. When we can expose a business process flow in a Canvas app, that'll be awesome,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mhm.
other things like that. But it's coming,
Right.
and I think you're right, Vivek, that it's a balance between the rush to bring new features out. And some of that's been rushed to get to parity with other systems.
Yeah.
But in that process, sometimes there's been issues or things break, and so we having more dependable performance, would be another thing.
Mm-hmm.
What do you find, Vivek, from Canvas app performance perspective? I find that's something that a lot of app makers don't think enough about, and you can get a really cool app that takes 2 minutes to load,
Yeah.
and the buttons aren't responsive or tries to do too much. So what do you find? How do you look at performance when you build a Canvas app?
So the first thing that so when we started using Power Apps, it was fine that it was taking like 30 seconds or a minute to load, because people were just excited to use it
Mm-hmm.
and see that, okay, it's such a good use case that I can wait 30 seconds to load it.
Right.
But then as we kind of got mature into the platform, we were like, okay, why is it taking 30 seconds?
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
is it not loading in a second? And then, I mean, you learn as well, right? You can optimize a lot of things.
Right.
Like the concurrent function, right? In Canvas apps, you can like run a lot of your, basically the functions together. Like if it's like you're collecting some records from SharePoint or Dynamics, you can kind of do that together rather than making one call after the other.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that you can optimize, and I know there has been great sessions by Mehdi
Mm-hmm.
on this, on how to optimize your Power Apps. But yeah, people, when they start with it, they don't realize what, I mean, they'll just uh, try to get all the records, and they're like, why can't we get more than 2,000
Right.
records? But then, do you need those 2,000 records, right? So it's like a journey.
Mm-hmm.
You start off with creating something which takes minutes to load, and then you kind of get towards like, okay, how do I make it much more faster? How do I maybe save some data?
Right.
If it's a mobile usage, can I do some offline kind of caching, basically? So yeah, it's always a journey, but I think if you are able to optimize your Power App, it doesn't take that much time to load.
Well, and it's kind of funny because they added the controls to where you can have like a spinner and that thing to show that it's working.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't help the customers. They don't they like to see the motion, but that doesn't make them feel better
Well,
that
what
it's taking.
Microsoft does in their first party apps is they put like a moving line
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
Something moving on the screen will cover up a few seconds,
Right.
maybe buy you 5 seconds.
Yeah,
but
35, 40, not so much. Not so much.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And I think I've seen you write or post some stuff about delegation as well, Vivek.
So delegation was a word which I didn't know anything about before I knew about Power Apps. But then I realized that yes, I mean, that's another way to optimize your Power Apps, right? You never want to see that yellow triangle.
Right.
It's the worst to see every time, and then you realize, okay, I'm using a data source which probably doesn't have like the functions that go along with it. So I have referred to the docs so many times just to see which functions
Right.
are we can delegate. But yeah, I, like there's been a question by a lot of people I just mentioned that why can't I get more than 2,000 records? But people don't think about like, do I really need those 2,000? Like, you're not gonna show 2,000 records in your gallery.
Yeah, a million records in a Canvas app isn't a good fit.
Yeah, I mean, that only means that you haven't thought through your use case.
Right,
Perfect.
right.
So you need to understand what are you trying to solve,
Right.
right? And is getting more than 2,000 records going to solve it? Most of the times, or I would say 100% of the time, it's
A lot of
no.
times I want to be able to search for a record,
Yeah.
and there's over 2,000 of them.
So then you use delegation, right?
Right.
I mean, there are ways to like filter records at the data source level,
Right.
and that's what is delegation.
And that's where a lot of the CDS delegation scenarios that people inadvertently walk into, I found that the system view capability can help a lot with that.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're not doing the all record view, you are choosing a view, and it does away with the scenarios where you just inadvertently are showing too many records. You need to show a subset.
Yeah.
So what would you do with a scenario where I have 3 different personas that need to use the app and different people see different views in a Canvas app? And they're radically different. Different filters, maybe different field layouts, different things like that. Would you try and build that into one app, or would you build separate apps for each of those groups?
That's a good question. I haven't had to tackle that because we have only made it for one kind of persona in our company.
Let's say
yeah,
the
but-
salesperson needs this view, the sales manager needs this view, and the sales admin needs another view.
So we build layers. So there is kind of a performance monitoring app, and we want the sales people to see it. We want the sales managers to see their direct reportees' performance. So we have built layers in such a way that, and you can do that, right? You can have things shown on the Canvas app based on the levels of the people, based on like you can have 80 groups or anything. So you can define those things within that's why I like Canvas apps a lot, because I can set these kind of custom kind of permissions based on their roles in the company. And that's how we do it. We show things on the canvas based on their role. So
Okay.
yeah, I think the flexibility that you have there to implement this, I mean, it's super easy to implement it. And yeah.
But you have to be mindful that those layers might carry some performance cost with them, right? So you got conditional things going on in your layers.
If you're trying to load all the layers at the
if
same
you're loading
time.
all the layers at the same time, right?
But yeah, that's the case, right? Or that's probably not the case. You probably don't want to load everything at the same time.
Right.
So it's
so you'd have an initial step that then would lead to whichever layer you would go to.
yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
Are you doing your flows and Canvas apps inside solutions?
No.
Ooh. This is where it gets ugly. The podcast turns.
And why is that?
uh, I mean, so when I said the reason why I just said nope is because probably I am not that. It's not something. So I started off making Canvas apps. I'm not from a Dynamics kind of
Sure.
a background, so it's just I think I'm not aware about it that much.
Okay.
And I think that's one area where people need to be more educated about. A lot of people don't even know that they can use solutions in, and I might be wrong in saying this, but I think you can use solutions in your default environment without having a CDS license. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, and a lot of Dynamics people aren't aware they can put their Canvas apps and flows and solutions either.
So yeah, it's so the reason why I haven't used this because a lot of the things that we have built, we have just built it in the environment, or
Right.
kind of the CRM environment in Power Apps. So we didn't find the need actually till date to do it. But I see the use case behind. I mean, if you're working on a test environment, we need to migrate it.
Sure.
The easiest way would be solutions. But I think we are not at that stage yet, or I haven't been at that stage yet where I had to use solutions.
And in all fairness, up until this week, there were things that you couldn't do with solution-based flows and Canvas apps. Like you couldn't call solution-based flows from Canvas apps. You can now. So a lot of those gaps are still being closed.
And
So
and is it and I think custom connectors was also not a part of solutions before. And now,
connectors,
yeah,
yes. Connections, no.
yeah,
So if
yeah,
you have a custom connector, it can be
yep,
in a solution. But if you have the connection details for that custom connector, can't.
yeah.
That may be closed. There's a small number of
So yeah, that's the benefit then, right? When you just import, export, like create a package of your Power App Canvas app, you don't get the custom connector along with it, if I'm
Right.
correct. But if you have solution, you get custom connector inside it, right? In the solution. So yeah,
right.
there's benefits to it.
We've turned him.
So what's ahead for you? I mean, you're an MVP. You do a lot of speaking at events, and but now you have a new job. Do you see what's your MVP strategy for like next year?
Uh, so I guess I never think about having an MVP strategy. If you're doing what I mean, it's my passion. There's new things coming up with it. If I keep doing things around it, if I keep creating content, and and I have never created something which I thought, oh, I should do this because I can add it as a contribution.
Right.
It's mainly about I should do this because people need to know about this. So I think if you keep doing that, um, I mean, the MVP status just stays. I don't think you shouldn't look at it as, oh, I need to. I mean, at the back of your mind, you'll always have that. Okay, I need to do it, but at the same time, you shouldn't have that in mind when you're creating stuff. It should be more to kind of educate the community, more to let people know which are not in the docs and everything. So yeah, I never think about an MVP strategy.
But we all have channels that we enjoy more. Some people love blogging. Some people
Yeah.
like podcasts. Some people like videos. Some people like publishing apps to the app gallery. What are your, I guess, what's your favorite, and what is the type of contribution you enjoy the least?
So I think the favorite now is the hashtag Power Addicts. So the main thing that we have we have these monthly Power Addicts hangout calls that we say it's, and we are reaching our 1 year anniversary next month. And the best thing there is we reach out to people who nobody knows about, who has just started using Power Platform, and we want to give them this platform to rise, right? And I think there's that's kind of giving back, right? You have learned so much from the community, you're giving back, and I enjoy that the most. Kind of making people more excited about it, making them come to this kind of Power Addict hangout calls, like promoting them on Twitter, just to let people know that there is a whole bunch of people around you who are doing great stuff with this platform, and you should do it too.
How do people get involved in that monthly call? Is there a site or
So it's a good question. We don't have anything that. So we always it was so going back a year when we started this. Uh, at some point we are like, okay, we are becoming like an organization now. We need to step back. So we don't want to kind of we don't have a website. We
Okay.
don't have anything formal. The only place that we have formal is a Power Addicts merchandise store, and again, we don't make any money out of it. It just goes to a non-profit.
Okay.
But we didn't want to make it formal. We want to keep it more, okay, reach out to somebody somewhere. If you use the hashtag quite a bit, and if you are there active on Twitter, there you'll be found. There was recently a guy who was, I forget the name now, but he was making great stuff with the UI and Canvas apps. And we got him. I mean, he was just posting great stuff on Twitter with the hashtag, and everybody was liking it, retweeting it. And we like, okay, do you want to come on the hangout call? He was like, yeah, I'd be willing to do that. So we don't want to make it formal.
But are
Like,
they recorded? Can people listen to them
yeah,
after the
so
fact?
Power Addicts Hangouts, it's we do it on Teams, and then we push it on our YouTube channel.
Okay.
So YouTube. Yeah.
And what's the YouTube channel called? Power
Power
Addicts?
Addicts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So we'll check that out. I've seen some of them. They're really good.
Yeah, it's like we have had different people from different countries, different backgrounds, and it's always fun to see what they're coming up with.
Yeah, it's great that you're highlighting the people that you don't see speaking at Ignite.
Yeah.
Right.
You're highlighting the unsung heroes that then many of them have become MVPs or people in the community that are
Yeah.
speaking at events, and it's just very inspirational to see people able to do that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
want the community to grow big. You don't want to be the only one kind of creating stuff, right? I mean, you want people to be more excited about it. You want people to be not kind of taking a step back. We want them to take a step forward.
Right.
So yeah.
And it seems like you're trying to build a living community, so there's not that rigorous structure of a defined organization. It's more like we're all in this together. We want to build and grow together. So
Yeah, we don't want to have any conditions or
Right.
anything like that, oh, you need to do this to be a Power Addict. No, you just need to know Power Addicts to be a Power Addict.
Vivek, if people want to get in touch with you or follow you on social media, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so my handle on Twitter is that_API_guy because somebody used that API guy and doesn't tweet at all.
Did somebody refer to you as that API guy one time? Couldn't think of your name. Said,
Yeah, sometimes people look at me and they're like, I've seen you somewhere. Are you that API guy? I'm like, yes. My name's Vivek, by the way.
I do have a name. Yeah.
Yeah, I blog. I have a YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is that API guy. My blog is that API guy.tech. But yeah, I try to do a combination of all that stuff. But yeah, hit me up there and I'll definitely get back.
Well,
Okay.
we'll put the links to that in the show notes for sure.
yeah, well, thanks for joining us, Vivek, and this has been great conference, and good to talk to you for the last hour.
And everybody else, get out there and become a Power Addict.
Yeah, and the next time we do a Spotify stuff, we'll get Joel's songs on our list.
Everybody needs a little Celine Dion.
Oh my goodness sakes! No, they don't.
All right, thanks for listening.